Okie dokie, so this one I hadn't even heard about until a video about it popped up in my feed on YouTube. Chris Stuckman claimed it deserved a cult following, and that had me intrigued. Now, I obviously didn't watch the actual video because I didn't want the whole movie spoiled. But I figured if someone decides this movie is worth singling out and dedicating a video to, it should be decent. So I checked it out on Imdb, and it did indeed not look too bad at all. In fact, the only thing that had me a little bit worried was the runtime of 2 hours and 17 minutes, which for most movies is pushing it, but especially for a horror movie. Because those tend to rely on suspense, tension and scary stuff, which is difficult to keep up for over 2 hours. But anyway, I pressed play on this and found myself to very much enjoy it almost immediately. First of all, it's a decent looking movie. It just looks very clean and nice, and I liked it visually. But the other thing that impressed me from the get-go was the sound design. And that is probably this one's strongest element. I think they really nailed it. Because it just works perfectly and manages to really enhance the mood and the atmosphere. Everything from the score to the sound effects in general, all of that just felt very impactful, and yeah, I liked it a lot. I also very much liked the intro sequence, which basically sets up the whole story and lasts about 20 minutes. Now after that though, the jump to the rest of the movie did feel a bit jarring. Because that second part felt very disconnected from the first part. It felt like I'd just gotten into the groove and started to enjoy a movie. And then that movie ends and another movie starts, one that has nothing to do with the first one. Now, of course they are connected, but it doesn't really feel like it at first. It takes quite a while for it to get going and for the connections to start to happen. Speaking of which, what's the movie even about? Well, in order to not spoil anything, I need to be very vague here. But essentially it's about this myth or legend of the titular empty man, who can allegedly be summoned by standing on a bridge after dark and blowing into an empty bottle. You know, it's very much in the vein of Slender Man or any number of other scary creatures from a modern myth. And yeah, to me that always does feel a little bit silly and I have a hard time taking it seriously. But because the execution here was so good and well handled all around, I could sort of just ignore that and found myself pretty immersed in this as a whole. And I would say that for the most part I did enjoy this movie. They did a good job with most of it. However, I did also have some issues with it, one that I already mentioned, the fact that the long intro sequence felt very disconnected from the rest of the movie. But that wasn't really the biggest issue, the more serious ones came later on. One of them being the fact that, yeah, as I suspected, it runs into some problems with the pacing. It does feel too long and could have been cut down to keep a tighter tempo. But even that wasn't really too much of an issue. I mean, it didn't help the movie, but it didn't really ruin it either. What did kinda ruin it for me though was the ending, because I think it tried to be a bit too clever for its own good. Like, here's the thing, on the surface I get what they were going for, and it sorta works. It connects everything and wraps it up in a way that should make some sense. Except for the fact that there are some details there that just didn't add up to me at all. And perhaps I'm an idiot and I missed something, but to me personally, I don't know, I feel like it kinda dropped the ball there at the end and I didn't really care for how it tried to explain things. Which means that I'm more or less inclined to give this something like a low 6. Boop. However, would I recommend it? I mean, there are far worse horror movies out there. This one did do a lot of things right, but at the end of the day I'm not sold on the way it wrapped it up. So I don't know, maybe give it a shot if it sounds interesting, or you can just skip it. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic.